blood this morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the generic thumbnail. I got a little, it is what it is. Y'all, it's slow news lately. But Mamdani has ruined New York. Of course, we all saw that coming. I'll admit the surprise here is more in how fast it happened. Right. Let's check in on our I hate to say, I can't even say countrymen in New York because it's more than 50% foreign born up there now. New York is a fallen state, and it's New York City is basically lost. Let's take a peek.
Here is Atlantic. We are hearing Azan. Come here.
I think we pretty off the Texas stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the call to prayer. I've heard the call to prayer played 5 times a day. I have. I've heard that personally. In Afghanistan. Okay? Not in this country. Now, New York is not the first place to do it. There, of course, famously, Minnesota has several cities that play the call to prayer several times a day. This is not an Islamic country. In fact, I think I would go so far as to say that the call to prayer, especially played early in the morning, is a gross violation of just basic human decency and the First Amendment, right? So I've heard a few people, Tim Pool and the like, they like to point out, it's important to understand that America had blasphemy laws early on, and that doesn't seem to be in keeping with the First Amendment. Now, hold on. I've talked about this a little bit before too. Yes, there were blasphemy laws in the United States of America, not federal. Blasphemy laws in the U.S. were at the state levels. And the First Amendment clearly says that the Congress shall make no law. So theoretically, under the language of the First Amendment, it's perfectly kosher for any given state in the several 50. Any given state could say, we are a Catholic state now, and you must be a Catholic to hold office. And the preferred religion of the state is Catholicism or Protestantism or even Judaism, whatever. Any given state could choose that. But by and large, over time, we have come to take the First Amendment to mean that the states are also beholden to that. That is a matter of practical application, not the letter of the law under the Constitution, right? So the individual states, it is true that especially that early on, many states had rules that you had to be, none of them had an established official religion of the state, but many of them had rules like you have to either profess to Catholicism or to Protestantism. You had to be one or the other in order to hold office in the state. That was true. I forget which one. I forget which one was the last to get rid of that, but it was right up until like the 1960s that the last state. It was one up in the New England block. I forget which one. You had to profess a Protestant faith in order to hold office. That said, any action in the United States by a government official, and that is at any level, right? This applies to the dog catcher all the way up to the president. Any action taken by an agent, a representative, an employee of government under color of law, which interferes with the rights of a citizen, is a crime. Right? We've talked about that one many, many times before. Section 242, right? Violation of civil liberties under color of law. So I would go so far as to argue that this constitutes the establishment of a state religion, because the practice of the religion is being involuntarily pushed onto the individuals in that state and in that city. Right? It is beyond me that there are not protesters out with picket signs protesting no, it's not, because conservatives have jobs and they're by and large fleeing New York. For many, many reasons, not least of which are the presence of Zohran Mamdani and his absolute psychopathy. The man has been in office for, 2 months now? Is it even 2 months? I think it's 48 days we're at now, right? And New York looks like this.
Bro, this sidewalk.
What is that? What is that? What are all those little specks on the side? What is all that? What am I looking at here? What can you tell? Can you tell what that is? Oh, this is what you're seeing. This is what you're seeing. Aha.
That person is peeing and pooping outside.
That's okay. So when I was deployed, when I was in Afghanistan, Barack Obama was the president. And one of the things that Barack Obama did to intentionally launder U.S. taxpayer dollars directly to terrorists is he ran these things called the Cash for Work programs, where, I shit you not, the U.S. soldiers would have to set up a table with a cash box and hand out local Afghani currency to local nationals and hand them tools, rakes and shovels and the like. I even worked on some of these details. Okay, I can't go into too much. Okay, well, I'll phrase it like this. I posed as security for the bulldozer on some of these details. So, I was there doing something else, but I was supposed to look like security. So we would take the bulldozer downtown into the little village, right, and give them rakes and shovels, and they would clean the trash up out of the street with rakes and shovels, and I mean rakes and shovels and piles. And then we would escort the bulldozer to a spot to dump the trash. And they'd be raking and shoveling human feces, food wrappers, animal carcasses, empty soda cans and bottles, just trash. And they literally just walk around and drop trash on the street. It's amazing how much trash they produce, because we would go down to the little village, do the cash payout to these people, which that cash was just going straight to Taliban. That's just what it was. And escort the bulldozer through the streets while the people shoveled their trash into the scoop. And I would see this shit happen. You would drive the bulldozer down the street. No, Dad, no, Sergeant Major. We had a soldier driving that bulldozer. It was an up armored bulldozer. It was actually one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. I kept trying to convince the command unit that we should use it to just level one edge of the city or the village to back it away from our walls on the command outpost there. And they kept telling me that was a war crime. So we just used Micklix for that. I like the end result there. That worked out for me. Pit Daddy says, did you have to look out for IUDs? We did not. But we did have to sweep for IEDs. But no, they didn't typically plant the IEDs inside the village either. not on those routes, because frankly, it was a tactical decision by the enemy. They correctly understood that if we went downtown to clean up trash and we encountered an IED, then we would stop giving them money to clean up their own trash. But here's the really amazing part is we're going down the street with the bulldozer, right? I'm on foot with a couple of my war fighters on foot and looking like security. And in fact, actually pulling security while doing, we'll just say something else. And, you look back and you'd see it. Bulldozer goes through, cleaning up all the trash, crew of people in front of it, shoveling trash into the front scoop. And behind it, people are just literally throwing more trash and shitting in the same street that we just got done cleaning. And guess what? We're back down there the next day to do it again. Right? That's who these people are. They live in squalor. They are squalor. And, we've said it 1,000 times, when you import the third world, you become the third world, as evidenced by New York City starting to look a hell of a lot like San Francisco. What else is happening in New York? What else is happening in New York City right now? That's right. They are, share this tab, boom, boom, that button. Come on, buttons, work for me. Some of these people are standing in this bread line for 5, 6, 7 hours to get into the free grocery store. Now, you've heard me say more than, hang on.
Will not be served. I do not care how long you've been standing in line, you will not be served.
Without a ticket. Okay. So the original food stamps program in the United States, and this, most people do not realize that the food stamps program is administered by the Department of Agriculture, right? And there's a reason for that. It's because of the origin of that program. So what happened is in the early 1900s, facing essentially logistics challenges, trying to fund rail transport from rural farms into dense urban cities like New York, for example. The problem was that the farmers could not afford the transport costs. Basically, they had a startup capital issue. They couldn't afford the transport costs to move their product into the city to sell it there. So, the farmers were doing fine generally, selling in their local farmers markets. But in order to achieve expansion and to feed the city as industrialization moved people off the farms, there was a problem. And that problem was the startup initiating cost of transport on rail into the cities. And so a government solution was devised where people would pay for the food that they wanted to buy in advance. You go and you would buy, that's right, you would give money to someone and they would give you a food stamp. You get a book of food stamps, right? That said you paid X amount for this food. And so when it comes in, you get to claim it, right? So for a while there, you would not go to a grocery store and use cash to buy food. You would use the stamps because you paid for it a month ago. And that way the money goes to the farmers first, and then they can pay the transport cost, they can pay the freight to get the food into the city. And then later that program just got converted into the nightmare dystopian welfare garbage that we have today. Now, quite separately, in every communist country, you've seen bread lines form, where the government promises, after we confiscate all your wealth, we will redistribute that wealth so that everybody gets an even share of the wealth that has been redistributed. or that is being redistributed. And what do you see? You see people standing in bread lines for 5 hours. Y'all, I cannot fathom this. I cannot fathom this. They're standing in bread lines for 5 hours. I would like to see some numbers. I would like to see some hard numbers. What quantity of grocery material are they getting when they stand in line for 5 hours? Are they standing in line for 5 hours for a month's worth of groceries? Are they standing in line for 5 hours for tonight's dinner? Are they standing in line for 5 hours for this week? What if you're a family of 6? Right? I've talked on the show before about using ChatGPT and going in and saying, hey, Chat, here's what I want. We're going to go to Costco. We're going to go to the Costco in this zip code so she knows which one we're going to. And here's what I'm looking for. I want groceries to feed a family of 6 for 2 weeks for $400 or less. Right? And, went back and forth with chat so that includes 3 meals a day for 2 weeks, plus a little something extra, right? And when I say a little something extra, it's like, okay, we plan on having canned corn, canned peas, canned green beans this many times throughout that period. And then after 2 weeks, we've still got like a quarter of the cans of canned food that we bought. Right, all the meat that we bought for that 2 weeks is consumed at the end of 2 weeks, but we still got some corn and beans and stuff left over. So that the next time I say, hey, chat, we're going grocery shopping, do the list, and y'all try this for real. Because the chat asks, hey, which zip code, which Costco? Okay, I'm going to this one. Cool. Here's your grocery list. Would you like me to put that in order by aisle so that it's super efficient? So it's not just, these are all the things you need. It's, these are the things you need in the order of attack. So you go in and you go down the first aisle, you get that second, and you just, nice and efficient. You don't find yourself wandering around the store. It's super efficient. We're in and out in half an hour with, now we're doing it almost a month at a time. In and out in basically half an hour for almost a month's worth of groceries plus carryover so that we're reducing the total bill, time by time. So much so that we just did a 3-week grocery run 4 days ago and got out the door for $350. And that was with, I want to say 30 pounds of chicken, 10 pounds of pork, and 10 pounds of beef. Yeah. But. That's all to say. These people are standing in line for 5 hours for free food. When the show's over today, I'm going to go do one contract that'll cover that grocery bill. It's going to take me about an hour to do it. And I'm going to drive 20 minutes down the street and do another contract. And then I'm going to drive 2 hours down the street and do 2 more contracts today. The communist wants me to stand in line for 5 hours for some undisclosed quantity of food that I strongly doubt that anybody's walking out of there after 5 hours in line with a month worth of groceries for a family of 6. Okay, they're probably coming out of that line with no more than $100, or what we would think of here in the South as $100, which is probably $250 in New York, because they have so badly debased and degraded their economy. I can't imagine. That is psychotic. That is the absolute state of New York right now. So what is old Mayor Mammy Dammy doing about it? Well, let's see. He gave a speech. I believe this is from yesterday. Oh, yeah, and it does say yes. 48 days.
that for those who have watched budget after budget, it is tempting to assume that we are engaging in the same dance as our predecessors. Let me assure you, nothing about this is typical. That's why our solutions won't be either. There are two paths to bridge this gap. The first is the most sustainable and the fairest path. This is the path of ending the drain on our city and raising taxes on the richest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations. The onus for
ending the drain on our city by raising taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers. To be charitable to the position of Mamdani, for the sake of argument, let us take, for an example, the least desirable sort of wealth, which would be generational wealth that has found its way into the hands of a gadfly layabout. Okay, let's assume that the wealth we're talking about is the young 20-something heir of a fortune that has just been passed to its decedents through the probate process, and that wealth, it's third, fourth generation wealth, likely to be discharged from the family's control through the incompetence and disinterest of the younger generation, which is something that often happens with new money wealth. Let's assume for a moment that that's the only wealth that exists in New York City, and that none of it is institutional, like large family institutions that are running multiple businesses. Let's just pretend for a moment that those don't exist. Even that worst case scenario, the socialite gadfly useless eater that happens to have a $1 billion trust fund is buying things in your city. Not small things. They're paying millions in sales tax alone through the course of their time in your city. At least hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales taxes alone. Forget property taxes and income taxes, right? There's a fair argument to say that they're not paying income taxes because they are likely not earning income. John Ossoff is a great example of one of these shitbirds. But they're spending money in your city. They're going to shows, they're going to nightclubs, they're drinking booze. They are, in fact, buying food, right? They're probably eating in restaurants more often than not, high-end restaurants that, also buy food. And you're going to look at these kids in the face and say, hey, we've decided that because the poors exist, we're just going to take some of your money. Oh, yeah, we know you've got plenty of money. Now, hold on a minute. I've got plenty of money. That doesn't mean I've got more money coming in. Now, in fairness, a lot of those younger guys that are in that situation may not realize, may not understand the catastrophic nature of that. Sergeant Major points out Mamdani is also a rich kid. Yeah, and I suspect that somehow this will not touch his money. In fact, I suspect that it's likely that most of his money lives offshore. He's one of these. I've dealt with a lot of Indians and Middle Easterners in business when I was still doing insurance, and I cannot tell you how many times I have sat down and looked a man in the face who told me, "Oh, I've got 37 grocery store, convenience stores, gas stations. My house is worth $7.5 million. It's me and 2 wives and 9 kids, and we're talking about health insurance. I make $35,000 a year." What do you mean you make $35,000 a year? Yeah, I only make $35,000 a year because he's got an LLC or an S corp that owns everything. I just about guarantee you that Mamdani's money is somehow organized in that way. So in this clip, he goes on to explain that they don't want to raid the pension plan, the this, the that. They don't want to, and then we have this clip. That's from the same speech.
Would rather do is ensure that they remain as they are so that the city can be on firm financial footing. However, in order to get to this point of closing the gap on both this fiscal year and the next fiscal year, we are forced to raid the rainy day fund, the retiree health benefits trust reserve, and to increase property taxes across these other years.
And to increase. So we're gonna raid the rainy day fund. We're gonna go ahead and take all the emergency. We're gonna steal the emergency money. And we're going to go ahead and raid your pension funds. I'm sorry. I don't think I heard you correctly. We're going to come and take your retirement away from you? This is why New York State and New York City lobbied and fought so hard against the Bruen decision. This is why lefties want to take your guns. Whenever a politician says he wants to take your guns away, it's not really your guns he wants. He wants you disarmed because he's coming to take something else away. Pitt, Danny, I don't think the fire and police will revolt. I think what will happen is they will just leave the city. Some enterprising young man with more money than he knows what to do with would probably be well served right now buying pensions for pennies on the dollar from state and city retirees in New York. Like, hey, look, I know you get what, $5,000 a month out of your pension. That's going to be worth about $2 million over the remainder of your life. If the pension didn't get raided, now that money's gone. It's not worth that anymore. Here's $250,000, and we'll collect the remainder. Here's $250,000 up front, and let me introduce you to this finances manager that's going to try and convert that into something that'll try to pay you out, maybe $36,000 a year for the rest of your life, so you can survive on a minimum wage. That should get you under the threshold where you qualify for food stamps, so you won't have to pay for that anyway. And we can get you in Section 8 housing too. And you'll get free Obamacare with that. And yeah, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. So, well, like I mentioned, I gotta go make grocery money this morning. So I'm about to have to hit the road. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow. Coda Girl, it's always my pleasure to give you a great show. I do try. I really do. Y'all take care, guys.